Welcome back. Following the stress and uncertainty around the pandemic, more teachers across the country are resigning. Teachers began leaving classrooms in 2020, and according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, around 600,000 teachers in public education quit between January 2020 and March 2022. Before we jump into it, let's take a look at this quick clip.
Recent surveys show that as many as half of all teachers are thinking about leaving teaching. Half of all teachers are thinking of leaving. Let's just say we lose 25% of those teachers. 1 out of every 4 teacher leaves. Currently, there are 4.4 million teachers in the U.S. If we lose 25%, that comes to 1.1 million teachers.
Joining me now to discuss the pattern we're seeing is Educator and Advocate Nicholas Ferroni. Nicholas, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Obviously, you're in my classroom with me, so just got done with my school day.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Now, can you tell me about your experience working as a teacher and educator?
I always wanted to be a teacher. I had amazing teachers who inspired me to pursue this field. But I will be honest, when I became a teacher, I didn't realize the business or bureaucracy of being an educator. I didn't realize that half the stuff I used in my classroom, my teachers bought. I didn't realize that they were working on their own time. I didn't realize that they were working other jobs in order to sustain their living so they could continue being a teacher. So my experience in my 19 years, it is the best job in the world. I love every day. I feel like I have 100 little brothers and sisters who I get to mentor, who inspire me daily. If teaching was my only job, it would be the best profession in the world. At the same time, it feels like that teaching is kind of irrelevant for everything else that teachers have to endure, deal with, and even do on a regular basis.
Now, as many of us know, the pandemic has made teaching so much more of a challenge. Can you explain the shift you've seen since teaching during the pandemic?
We saw a shift very quickly of once we went virtual, people began to appreciate teachers. You don't appreciate what you have till you don't have it. And like we noticed with statistics, we are losing a lot of people in this profession. But then we saw a quick shift back to go back to work, to do your job, to stop complaining, to just continue to endure everything that teachers have done throughout their entire existence. I mean, teachers have gone above and beyond forever, and the pandemic kind of exacerbated and exposed all the things that teachers have done above and beyond our contractual obligations that people just now expect us to do. And the pandemic was a blessing for a short period of time, and now it's just kind of a downward spiral for educators and education in general. I mean, the system is crumbling as we speak.
Now, you kind of touched on that. Because of many of these challenges, we are seeing teachers who are deciding to leave the profession entirely. As someone who is so passionate about the work that you do, what were your initial thoughts on this finding?
Well, I've updated my resume for the first time in 19 years, which to me, what does it say about society, or what does it say about this in general when you have people who always dreamed of becoming a teacher are leaving their dream jobs? There's not another profession where people dreamed of pursuing that field and they're leaving because the field has become so toxic and unbearable. In my current role as an educator now, it's like I love my job, I love my district, but things, if they're not going to change, the system's going to literally come crumbling down because we've maintained it for so long. My heart goes out to the teachers who are forced to choose between doing something they love and their livelihood. And it says so much. And I don't think that's what people realize. When a teacher says they're leaving teaching and they say it's the toughest thing they've ever had to do, believe them. Because for us, it's not a job. It's not something that we just can kind of pack up and move on. We feel like we're letting down our families, our students' families, our students, and it's just something we've always dreamed of doing. So when teachers say that leaving teaching is the toughest thing, I would believe them, because for most of us it is. The thought of me even leaving the classroom, it keeps me up. It breaks my heart. And so many educators are broken by having to make that decision, but they're being forced to do so.
Now, as we can see on this map, the teacher shortage has already begun to affect more states than others. With the way things are going, do you expect to see the number of teachers leaving rise in other states as well?
I mean, come September, I feel like in the South it's probably more prominent than in the North, and based on the map you're showing, kind of states that as well. But come September, there's going to be a great exodus. There's going to be, it's not a teacher shortage, it's teacher attrition. Teachers are being forced out of this profession. They're being forced to choose between survival or dealing with everything else that we've endured for so long. And on top of that, now the political attacks, now the weaponization of educators, now the demonization of educators. We see that on such a large scale. My concern is come September, I mean, we're going to see an exodus like we've never seen before. And my concern and my fear is that it's too late by then. If you are forcing people who always dreamed of being teachers out of teaching, there is no chance you will convince people to become educators who never wanted to be an educator.
Wow, that's really powerful, and I'm really glad that you mentioned that. A little bit earlier, you also talked about just kind of a toxic environment. Can you detail what you mean by toxic and how it can actually be toxic for people who are working in that environment?
Uh, I mean, there's so many levels of toxicity in education, whether it's the fact that teachers are expected or even have to work a second job in order to maintain their livelihoods because they can't survive solely on their teaching salary. The fact that it's acceptable for teachers to pay for their own supplies or beg for their supplies online, which we have to do because it's either we beg for them online through different sites or we buy them ourselves, or the fact that parents are showing up to board meetings attacking teachers and claiming they're doing things they're not doing, yet they don't have that same energy when their child's teacher is either working an extra job or paying for supplies for their child in their classroom. We just see the toxicity developing on people are attacking teachers who dedicated their lives to the success and happiness of other people's children, but for some reason are being used as political tools and ways to scapegoat and to create problems that are non-existent. When all we do every single day is want every one of our students to feel, first of all, feel secure, feel stable emotionally, physically, and just to know that they're nurtured and cared for. And educated. So we want every student to walk in our classroom and feel like they know they exist, they matter, and to empower them. We're not trying to indoctrinate them. We're not trying to undermine parents. We work with parents. We want to assist parents and guardians into the success of their child. And the fact that parents and guardians are believing politicians over somebody who spends 180 days with their child, to me, it is so mind blowing.
Now, you touched on it a little bit, and it's the issue of pay. You posted an article on Twitter about this, and we learned that 41% of K through 12 teachers work another job just to make ends meet. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I would honestly think the statistic is much higher because a lot of teachers like myself would bartend or do jobs that pay in cash. So that may not be calculated in that survey. At the same time, a lot of teachers work other jobs within the school system. So they advise, they coach, they tutor, they run other programs. So, I mean, I would honestly bet that stat is probably closer to 60 or 70%. I mean, on average, I work 3 jobs. I'm working 2 jobs right now. I create content, I edit, I blog, I do presentations. So I work 3 jobs right now, and I do fairly well for an educator. I live in New Jersey. We get paid pretty well. I mean, it's very common for teachers to donate blood, to drive Uber, to Airbnb their extra rooms out, just to try to find every single way they can to supplement their income. And it's interesting enough where if you look at college majors, teaching, which most people would argue is probably one of the most important professions and careers we need to sustain a functioning society, ranks 49th out of 50 on most starting pay or average pay college degrees. And that in itself is a problem. Teachers do not want to be millionaires. I do not want to be a millionaire, but it'd be nice if I only had to focus on teaching. And I think the irony is like I'm wearing a shirt that says teachers are underpaid because we do not value the work of women. I'm 24 or 25% in a field dominated by women. And I didn't experience sexism until I became a teacher because it just showed me how much we do not value the work of women because it is a predominantly female dominated field. So that was an interesting eye-opening experience for myself as well. But teachers, it's state to state, it varies. At the same time, I have friends who have a doctorate degree with 25 years experience who are barely making above the poverty line in certain states in the South.
Now, what are your fears if this continues to happen?
We don't really appreciate something or someone until they're gone. The public education system is going to come crumbling down. And what schools are going to do is they're going to probably do the quick fix where they're going to lower the standards to become educators. They're going to lower the pay or try to even increase the pay to recruit more people. But they're going to fill positions with people who do not want to be there, who are solely doing it for the pay or solely doing it because they have nothing else to do. And then, which they're not going to give their heart, their soul, their passion to it. They won't be qualified to do it. We see a lot of school districts trying to beg people to come to this field with no experience. So if schools do not pay their current teachers more money to retain them, increase their salaries, increase their salary scales, we're going to see the whole system fall apart. And to me, public education is the one investment that benefits everyone. It is the center of every community. If we do not invest in teachers, if we do not invest in schools, then I hate to say it, but it's like that's the downfall of society. And I'm not being dramatic. I'm just being honest. You know, parents can't privatize. They can't pay for certain schooling. They can't homeschool their children.
Now, I know what you're saying. A lot of teachers have felt the same way. However, a lot of them fear speaking up because they believe it will result in retaliation. Have you seen or experienced this? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
For every post I make or every comment I make, I probably get 1,000 messages from teachers saying, I can't say this publicly, but this is what my concern is. This is what we're dealing with. There are teachers who are so afraid to share what's going on because they know that they'll be punished for just sharing their reality. And I'm luckily in a position, I work in a great district. I'm extremely supportive of my administration. To me, it's like when I share concerns, they're not personally always my concerns. They're more of a collective concern because I try to provide a space for teachers to share and know they're not alone. But people think, First Amendment rights apply. They don't, not to teachers, because God forbid a teacher says something and then either a parent complains about it or an administrator sees it, they will be reprimanded. If they're not fired, they will be punished in some way. Even school districts have their teachers sign, privacy issues or privacy contracts where they can't say anything about the school or the district or anything that happens within the school on social media. And to me, that's a problem as well. So many teachers are forced into silence. Which then brings the argument that people attacking teachers are very loud and plenty of teachers can't even defend themselves. If a parent criticizes them, a teacher can't even defend themselves publicly. So therefore, people only see the negative message, which is why I feel obligated to share any form of support.
So I appreciate that so much. Can you quickly just let everybody know how they can actually stay up to date with you on social media?
Well, you can follow me at Nicholas Ferroni, which is NicholasFerroni on Twitter and Instagram. And for information and entertainment, it's at Mr. Ferroni for TikTok, which now I obviously have to be involved into, which my students tricked me into getting into. But yeah, it's just, support. You don't have to have a child to support public schools or public school teachers.
Nicholas, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your honesty, and I think what you're saying could help so many other teachers out there. So I really appreciate it.
I hope so. Thank you for allowing me to say it. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.